We're here, we're alive and thrive in the world's most culturally diverse city, Toronto, Canada, home of Blue Jays, Raptors, Maple Leafs, and Canadian psychic Robert Lindsay Milne. That's me. Welcome to my side of the crystal ball. I always tell you we got a great show, and that's because we always do have a great show. And my guest tonight is someone who's taught me a great amount. Her name is Nicole Antoinette, and her podcast and her show on Facebook is Guiding Echoes, and she's also on YouTube. And incidentally, channeler, psychic, teacher, healer, and brilliant with social media. And she's going to be with me on the experts, sitting in the experts chair, and she's also the main event. Before you, and of course, there's going to be a WWRS, and incidentally, it is a direct result of my conversation with Nicole, tonight's WWRS. So stick around for that one. Before we get started in this very exciting show, I've just got a couple of requests. If you're watching us on YouTube and talking about subscriptions, please subscribe to our channel. When you subscribe to our channel, we get more recommendation, we get higher ratings than, and our show gets more attention, and then we can continue going on with the show. So if you're watching us on YouTube, please write a comment, they're important, and subscribe to our channel. And incidentally, subscriptions are complimentary, and you'd be doing good old Robert a big favor if you subscribed. And if you do, thanks. You can also see us on Apple, Spotify, and pretty much anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. And if you'd like to get in touch with me personally, you can find me on my website, www.robertlindsay.com. You can find me on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and you can also find me on TikTok. Yes, indeed, TikTok. And now, without further ado, let's get this show on the road with WWRS. We are unique. There is no other being in the universe just like us. Each one of us are different, and we see things from different points of view. And each one of us has different skills, abilities, awareness, and talents. We're different, but we're the same. We're humans. Several years ago, like maybe 25, I decided to have a major change in my life and move down to outside of Toronto into this small town called Beamsville, rather near Niagara Falls, Ontario. It was a brand new neighborhood. The subdivision had not yet been started. It was just a big field. And we bought, my partner and I, Deborah, we bought our house from plans. And everybody had done that, and we were waiting for our houses to get built. I decided that I wasn't going to tell anybody in the new neighborhood what I do, and I was going to be incognito as Robert Lindsay Milne in the small town of Beamsville, and I was just going to see how people would respond to me as a person. A friend of mine was part of the development team for the construction site, and he had been to me for several readings, and I told him I wasn't going to tell anybody I'm psychic. But he happened to mention to the construction foreman, this man's name was Hugh O'Malley. And Hugh was a tough old Irishman from Belfast, a really good guy. Hugh is a finishing carpenter, and he was the supervisor of construction for the entire subdivision. And my friend told Hugh what I do. And Hugh started asking me a lot of questions. So I told him that I would answer any questions about being psychic on the condition that he doesn't tell anybody what I do. We both agreed, And he started asking me questions. And over the 6 to 8 months, he asked a lot of questions about being psychic. And I'm almost always patient with people, and I share my knowledge and information. All right, now we move into our beautiful house. We've been there for a couple of months. One day I get home from work, drive, from downtown Toronto, and Deborah says to me, Robert, look at this article in the magazine. It was Martha Stewart living. I didn't know Martha Stewart living. So anyway, she showed me, and Martha had put pegboard on the wall. I think it was in her pantry or something. And Deborah said, I would really love to have pegboard on in the garage. And I thought, well, how difficult could pegboard be to put on the garage? And I said, okay, well, I'll do that. She gave me the magazine with all the instructions and details. And I thought, if Martha can do it, I'm sure I can do it. Saturday morning comes around. I get up really early, drive down to the small store, the hardware store in a small town. It was about twice the size of a 7-Eleven store, by the way. So get into, I go in, I show the guy the magazine, and he already knows I'm from away. So I say to him, I want to build this today. What do I need? And he got me the material. And then I said, okay, so what else do I need to put this on the wall? I said, because I have no tools. So I bought absolutely everything I need to do the job, everything. Loaded up in my beat up old Jeep, because I was living in the country, drove home, put everything in the garage, down on the garage floor, and then looked around and said, what the hell am I going to do? And I just looked there and I thought, what? I just didn't know what to do. So I went out and I was sitting by the curb, feeling rather dejected. And I looked down the road, and who's driving up? Hugh O'Malley. And remember, he was a finishing carpenter, and he's in charge of the building of the whole site. Now, sometimes men that do men's work, physical work, building and constructing and just smashing down, and they kind of look down on guys that don't know how to do that, and I'm one of those guys. So as Hugh was driving up, I ran out on the road, flagged him down, and I looked at him and said, Hugh, what's the first thing you do if you were going to do a psychic reading? And he looked at me and said, how the hell should I know? And I said, Hugh, what's the first thing you would do if you were going to put pegboard on the wall? And I saw him thinking, as the wheel went around. And then he said, oh, here, I'll show you. And he got his toolbox out and brought some tool, and the saw. And he come up into the garage and he looked around and he said, here, I'll leave the saw for you. So I picked the saw up and I looked at it and I said, how do you turn this on? And he came over and said, no, I'm not going to leave that for you. He then went over to the wall, looked at it, looked at the pegboard, did a couple of little zip measurements, and then 10 minutes later, all the pegboard was on the wall. I still would have been working on it. I didn't know how to do it. But I showed Hugh that I'm an expert at my field, and he's an expert at his field. And I spoke to him in that self-respect and respect for him. Every one of us on the planet has something good that we can do. Everyone. If we're alive, we can do something. If we have something, and we all do, when we do it, we're doing good. So when I say goodnight to you and I say do good, there's something you can do that's good. And that's what Robert says tonight. I'd like to introduce my guest tonight, and her name is Nicole Antoinette. And Nicole Antoinette has a Facebook channel and a podcast called Guiding Echoes. She's got 33,000 followers. She's a psychic medium, intuitive, teacher, counselor, healer. She's really funny, and she's really got a great personality. This is our second meeting, by the way. Our first interview, for some reason, it got deleted, and we're doing like a replay of the first one. This is going to be just as much fun or even more. So I'd like to introduce Nicole Antoinette on my side of the crystal ball. Once again, here we are getting the opportunity to talk about what we love the most, doing our work, and glad to see you again. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. So you've been a functioning, performing professional psychic. Is that what you would call yourself, a professional psychic? For how long now?
It's been about 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
How did that happen?
So the way I even discovered that I had psychic abilities, or I guess I should say when I first realized that's how I could define them as such, actually came pretty much by accident. So one year I wanted to decorate my home for Halloween, and I decided I was going to create a seance scene in my front yard. And that seance scene was going to be modeled after or inspired by the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, because I'm a Disneyland freak. I love Disneyland.
Oh, are you?
So this is going to be my homage to the Haunted Mansion. So I started looking at different tarot cards online, and there was a particular set that was really calling to me, but it was $30, and I didn't want to spend that much because I was being kind of cheap, and I just wanted these for decorations. I didn't want to spend a whole lot of money on them. So I kept looking at different cards, and that one kept popping up, and it was like, man, these cards are beautiful. So I put them on my wish list and then walked away. And I think it was like 2 or 3 days later, in the middle of the night, I finally bought them because they were haunting me. Like I kept thinking about these cards.
Sure.
And so finally one day or one night, wasn't able to sleep, got up at like 2 or 3 in the morning, don't really remember, and bought them and was finally able to fall asleep. What's funny is I forgot I had bought them, like almost immediately after. So they arrive in the mail, and I'm like, what did I order? I don't even remember ordering anything. Open up the box. I was like, oh, my cards.
What was the name of the deck, by the way? I'm just curious.
They're no longer in print, but they were called the Wizard's Tarot.
Okay.
And there's a lot of different decks now called the Wizard's Tarot, but it's not that same one. Yeah, it's not that
You
same
had
deck.
the original.
Yes. Yeah, it was a gorgeous deck. And
do you still have it?
I still have it.
Wow.
Yeah, I still have it. So it's a very sentimental deck of cards. So when I pulled those cards out of the box and I felt them in my hands and I was looking at the artwork, it was just like, this is too precious to use. Like I cannot use these for decorations. And I felt this need to protect the cards. And so I decided I was going to learn how to read them. So I bought all of these. I'm kind of one of those like go big or go home people. Yep. So like I ended up buying all these different books on how to read tarot, joined an online group where we exchanged tarot readings for beginners. And I just had a knack for it. And so I was blowing all the students away. Like even people who had been doing this for years are like, whoa, you're really good at this. And so shortly after,
Can I just interject here for a moment?
Sure.
So you were just learning about the tarot and you were doing better than all these people that have been doing it for so long.
Yep.
Did you know the meaning of the cards because you read about it, or did you know the meaning of the cards because they talked to you?
They talked to me.
Yeah,
they absolutely talked to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I had to find out. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I would pull a card and I would be like, well, I know that the 3 of Pentacles means mastership, but that's not what I'm getting out of this card. So, you know, I would just go on my own tangent and it would turn out to be correct, 9 times out of 10. Actually, it's more like 10 times out of 10, but I don't want to seem like I'm bragging.
That's a pretty good score. Yeah. That's a pretty good score.
It was,
10 out of 10. I'd take that.
So yeah, tarot is definitely one of the things that I'm still very, very good at and good with. So shortly after I took the class and realized I had a knack for it, I started guiding echoes. And so back then, I just had a Twitter account I put together.
What is guiding echoes?
So Guiding Echoes is my business.
Okay.
That's where I offer my online courses and online membership and my psychic services. And it is also the name of my YouTube channel. And of course, people can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Guiding Echoes.
Guiding Echoes. Okay.
Yes. Guiding Echoes. So started Guiding Echoes, and at that point, I just had like a crappy little website.
Yep.
It was bad, man.
This was like 10 years. Was this like 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
This was when people were just getting on the WordPress bandwagon, but you still had Joomla and all these other things. So I had like this handmade HTML site that was awful, but almost all websites were awful back then. So it's all right. And had a Twitter account, and I was mostly just tweeting inspirational things and tweeting my insight on different tarot cards. And so that audience actually started growing really big very quickly. And so I was able to start getting clients that way. And what was really interesting was that once I went professional, once I started working with clients, there was this fascinating thing that happened where spirits started to come through. And I didn't really understand what was happening at the time because...
How did you know they were spirits coming through?
I don't think that I really did in the beginning. Like, I didn't really understand what was happening. But what it felt like for me is there was definitely a presence in the room, and I could feel from what direction it was coming from. Usually it was from the front, the front left side. They'd come in this way, so I'd feel them. But in my mind's eye, I would see them, and I'd usually see them pretty clearly.
You would actually see a form
in my mind's eye. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Of course, I understand that. Yes.
Yeah, but the combination of the presence and how strong they were in my mind, it was so distracting that I had to stop the reading and address what I was seeing. And I would ask my client, does this make sense to you? And a lot of times they were able to verify that, yeah, that was in fact someone that they knew in spirit. Wow. And so, and the spirits would come forward and they would give identifying information. So they would show me what they were wearing, maybe on the day of their death. They would give me different details about themselves, like if they were someone's father or what their relationship was like. Oh. So I was getting a lot of information. And remember, I was not trained as a medium. At no point had I ever been trained as a medium. So this was just through, I think my energy was just opening up and inviting them because I'd been meditating every day and working with tarot. So those two things were like blowing everything up. Yeah. And so I was telling one of my friends who was also a medium what was going on. She's like, I think you're a medium. And I'm like, I think you're crazy. But the more this started to happen, I realized, okay, I am a medium. And so then I started going down that path.
What did that feel like when you said to yourself, I am a medium? What was that like?
It felt weird. Honestly, it felt weird. It was like the imposter syndrome kicked in immediately, and I still have it. I still have the imposter syndrome. Yeah. Right. So it's like, and it's
your imposter syndrome. Is that what other people think, that you're an imposter, or you think yourself as an imposter?
You think of yourself as not being good enough for what you're doing. So, so you see yourself as an imposter. So like your self-esteem in that area can be low.
When you're not doing it as opposed to when you're doing it. Because like when you're doing it, you believe it. And then when you're not doing it.
Right.
Okay, good. All right. So when you're in the moment. Okay.
Right.
Good. All right.
When you're in the moment, all this information's coming through. You're like, this is amazing.
Okay. That's okay. Yeah.
and then like, 2 hours can go by and you're like, am I really doing what I think I'm doing? Is this real? Yeah. And especially, I think what kills creativity is the comparison game that we all, I think, play with other people. Because we'll see another medium who seems to be better, a different psychic who seems to be better. But when you get to talk to that person one-on-one, you find out that they're just as confused sometimes as you are. Like they go through the same struggles,
We do our job helping people so that we can help ourselves. That's why we do what we do. Empaths, we don't come down from heaven. Right. We fight our way out of hell. So in our fighting out of hell, we have all kinds of things that we have to work on. Yeah. But that's what makes us good at our job, at our work, at our calling.
I think so too. Yeah, I think that in most professions where you are working with people, when you're serving people, you have to have a certain amount of empathy. And so that's why a lot of psychics and mediums and healers will go through absolute hell.
Absolutely.
Because they need to be able to identify the same pain that those other people are going through.
Absolutely. And you need to feel it to empathize and connect to it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. So I started working on the mediumship aspect.
You must have been reading my mind. I was going to ask you about that.
Well, we are psychic.
Yes, we are.
So I wanted to start developing that, but that actually ended up being far more difficult than, finding things on tarot. Yeah, because mediums fight. I don't know if you know this.
I haven't hung out with a lot of people over my career. I haven't hung out with that many people that do the work. So I don't know the eccentricities of my contemporaries.
Gotcha. It was really confusing because psychic mediums disagree on a lot of different things. So, you'll have one psychic medium that is like, there's only heaven. That is the only realm that people pass into. And then you'll have another medium. So it's like, well, no, heaven's just one realm, but all the other realms are all light and love. There's nothing more than that. Then you'll have another medium who's like, well, there's everything. There's dark, there's light, and so.
I'm more like that guy or that person. That's more like me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because we see that contrast here on Earth.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so it became confusing very quickly because I wanted guidance on that path. And when I was reading all these books that were conflicting in information, it really started to mess with my head where it was like, I didn't know what to believe anymore. And then I started wondering if a lot of things I was experiencing was just in my head because I had seen darker things. I wouldn't classify them as evil exactly, but maybe just like, if a lion breaks into your house, that's, it's going to act out because it doesn't belong in your house. It's a lion. Right. And sometimes I think different energies can end up in a place they really just don't belong in and they cause havoc because it's not where they belong. So it's a messy energy. And I do think I wouldn't call it evil or malicious, but it is destructive, because it's not where it's supposed to be.
Right.
So, I think that my willingness to learn and my desire to be guided actually did more harm than good in the beginning. And I think that's where some of the imposter syndrome came from, because it's like, I respect this work so much that I want to be absolutely certain that what I am teaching and what I am telling people is correct, because this work is way too important for anything less than that.
Well, I love that. That's good. I like that.
Thank you. But the catch side is that it's spirit. And so I don't know if we'll ever have that absolution until we die, until we transition.
Well, when it comes time to identifying or labeling being psychic, I'm more of a minimalist, and instead of with the people that I mentor and how I've taught this work, I've done my best to keep everybody away from I'm a clairvoyant, I'm a clairsentient, I'm this, and just get away from it and just follow what's going on inside, rather than saying you're a telepath or a medium or you're a psychic. Just do it. And then experience it from there.
Well, and that's also good advice because, well, first of all, people love labels, but
Yep.
psychics tend to be very eclectic. I have not known a single psychic who is like, no, I'm just a clairvoyant. No, I just work with crystals. No, I'm just a tarot reader. Like they all have
Sure.
a wider range of tools and gifts that they rely on. And intuition doesn't talk to us in just one language, it talks to us in several. And so,
Right.
yeah, so to be clairvoyant, clairsentient, and those are really just the psychic senses. So it is a little funny to me when people are like,
and-
I'm
and
a
just do it.
clairvoyant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just do it.
Yeah.
Rather than label it and have an expectation and
Right.
fail.
Yeah.
Just say what you feel. That's where I come from, but
Yeah.
I'm old school.
Yeah. Yep. So, no, I agree. I mean, you have to have titles at some point. Like, if I wasn't
Absolutely.
telling
Yeah.
people I'm a psychic medium, they'd be like,
Sure.
what do you do? I mean, I could still
Right.
say I talk to dead people, but when I say
Right.
I'm psychic,
Well,
you know, they
right.
get it. But
I always just called myself a psychic until I started doing shows and stuff, and everybody had all these titles. So I decided, okay, well, I'll be an intuitive psychic, or
Right.
I'll be an intuitive psychic counselor. I still do the same thing.
Right. Yeah, I've been struggling with that for a long time too, because it's like I do a lot of different things as well. So it's like, am I a spiritual mentor? Am I a psychic mentor? Am I a psychic teacher? Am I a spiritual
Right.
teacher? Am I an intuitive teacher?
Right.
Am I an intuitive mentor?
Right.
Like, what am I? I don't
Right.
know, man.
Right. Well, yes, of course, because it's trying to fit into
Yeah.
a description, and we may not necessarily fit that description.
True.
And
True
we
enough.
all do our work differently.
Yeah, this is true. So, yep.
So we were talking about how you discovered that you are psychic, or that
Mhm.
you are a medium, and that. So, do you remember what it was like the first time you accepted spirit were talking to you?
I do.
Do you
So,
remember that? Oh, wow! Share
I
that
do.
one.
So, well, I don't know if it's the first. I don't think it's the first spirit. I don't
remembrance.
remember the
Okay,
first
okay, all right,
spirit, but I
okay,
do
okay.
remember. I do remember when it was so strong in that moment where it was like, okay, this is real and this is what I really can do. Like I am, in fact, a medium. So at that particular time, what happened was I was doing a tarot reading for a client, a very lovely lady.
Yeah.
And as I was pulling cards for her and reading the cards, these two gentlemen walked in. And I saw them in my mind's eye. So they were these two spirits.
Okay. So they didn't walk in the room. They came in your mind. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So I saw them come through, and their presence was so strong, and the image imprinted in my mind of them was so strong that I could not continue the reading because their presence was so distracting. So I stopped the reading and I told the woman, like, I'm sorry, but I have to take a break because I actually have two gentlemen here, and I believe they want to talk to you. And so I went on to describe who these two gentlemen were. So there was one man, and they were both college age kids. They were both in their young 20s. And so one of them was wearing a hoodie and he was crying. And then there was another gentleman, like blonde hair, blue eyed, looked like, he probably played on a football team, had his arm around the guy that was crying, that was wearing the hoodie. And he was like, shh, it's okay. It's okay. Like everything's fine. Like we're okay. So I told the woman what I was seeing, and she was like, oh my God, I know exactly who that is. Well, it turned out that these were two of her friends that she had known in college, and the one that was wearing the hoodie had gotten the two of them into a car accident, and he had been the one at fault. And so they had both passed away. They'd both transitioned in that car accident. And so that spirit had come forward with a tremendous amount. Okay.
I can't believe it. That's a mess. I'm sorry. I have to sign the package if we can.
Okay.
I'm sorry for messing that up. Sorry.
That's okay. So
You
it turned
were
out
talking
that
about two kids. Yeah.
right. So it turned out that that the one that had been crying was responsible for the car accident that took both of their lives, and and the car accident was his fault. And so this had happened years ago, but that spirit was clearly still carrying guilt and remorse for it. And so when I told the woman the story, she was just astounded, and she verified, everything that I told her. And she said, well, tell him that we're all okay. Like, we love him. We care about him very much. Like, no one blames him for anything. And so as she was saying this, like, you could feel him. I'm getting goosebumps talking about this because it was such a cool story. And so you could feel his energy starting to lighten. And that was the healing that he needed. Like, knowing he was forgiven, knowing that people still thought of him fondly. No one was mad at him. Like, there was something about that healed him, and I believe helped him to be able to adjust to life on the other side without that guilt and without that regret any longer. So it was fascinating because it was like I saw a spirit transformation take place right in front of me. And, of course, I was very, very, very new to the mediumship journey. And so I wasn't aware that things like this really happen, or if they did, what this type of transition or experience would look like. So that is the time when, after that experience, I got off the phone with my client, and I really just kind of sat and thought about that whole experience for a while. And it was like, wow, that was real. That really happened. Like, these people came through so clear. And that's the point when it was verified to me validated to me that I was a medium.
Okay. Slightly off topic, but similar about spirits. Okay. Mm-hmm. So when those two figures came to you in your mind, in your mind's eye, is that correct?
Yes.
But you saw their forms, what they looked like and stuff. Mm-hmm. Where do they live?
What do you mean? Where do they live? Are they?
So when they come to you, where do they come from to talk to you? Where do they have their own pod somewhere? Are they in a house? Do they all gather on the beachfront? Do they have their own home? What happens there? Or have you ever thought of that? Because I just did.
From what I've learned in tuning into the other side is every person has a different idea of what their heaven is. And so when they get to the other side, heaven looks vastly different for everybody. And heaven is just the term that, we as humanity have coined for whatever lies on the other side. But it's different for everyone. So people go to, I would call them different layers or different realms based on their energy, based on their beliefs, based on a lot of different things. And so for those two particular people, I'm not exactly sure where they were, but since the two of them were together and you had the one who was remorseful and the one who was okay, I don't believe that they were earthbound, so they weren't stuck, they weren't ghosts, they had crossed over, but it was that one still had a very, very heavy heart and probably wasn't able to enjoy the afterlife because that pain and that regret and that guilt was so heavy for him. And so you will run into that once in a while where people have been on the other side for what's years for us and maybe seconds for them. Like, to them, that trauma that it can still be new because time works differently over there than it does here. So as far as where those two came from, I don't know. I would assume that they must have been close to this woman or, her family or whoever, because while I was talking to her, they came through. So what you said is that heaven is what we make it. Mm-hmm. So if we have a vision of what our heaven would be like, it would be like that? Most likely, yeah. It would be. It would be a better version of it. Yeah. Really? What would yours be? Oh gosh, that's a great question. I think that I would probably have some cool mini castle because I don't want an actual huge place, but like a mini castle by an ocean. Yeah. Beautiful weather all the time. I'd be sporting barbecues because I love socializing. So I'd have like the best coffee nook. Actually, I want that here. I don't want to wait till heaven for that, though. Well, you can do that. Mine is my dream of heaven would be. Did you ever see the movie City of Angels and Nicolas Cage? Oh, yeah. Okay, so I would love that job. Only have feelings. There you go. Now that would be heaven for me.
doing that job as the angel, just sort of when people are passing over or when they're going through something really big. That would be my idea of heaven.
Well, and you could, because that's what spirit guides do. You could cross over and you could sign up to be a spirit guide and help people with the heavy life transitions that they go through. So, yeah.
So that would be my idea of heaven. Well, there's a few others, but we'll keep it to that.
There you go.
So how do you teach what you do? How do you teach what you do? Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's a loaded question, because basically what I do is when I'm working with people one-on-one and they're wanting to learn how to work with their psychic abilities, I meet them where they are, because everyone's at a different level. Some people are just opening up. Some people are actually very seasoned in their abilities, but maybe they shut them down for a while because of social pressures or, the environment they're in, whatever the case is. And so I just meet them where they are. And I want to learn more about their experiences. I want to learn what they love about being psychic, what they're intimidated by, what their best experience has been as a psychic, and if they could create more of one thing as a psychic in their life, what would that be? Would it be helping spirits to cross over? Would it be connecting with loved ones on the other side? Would it be being able to tune into the future? Would it be healing people, emotionally? Like, everyone has a different ideal of how they would use, their psychic powers. And I believe that whatever you're most inclined to is what you already have. You just have to learn how to mold that and how to groom it a little bit better. And so I believe we all have different psychic gifts. And once I'm able to really tune into what someone wants to develop based on what their purpose seems to be pushing them towards, that's when I'll start to develop a plan for them. So I don't really have a one-size-fits-all technique for anyone. It's very custom and individualized for that person. A lot of times I will walk them through guided meditations that I channel as I'm working with them. So it's not like anything pre-made or pre-written. I'll tune into their energy and just kind of see maybe what needs to be healed or what needs to be addressed. Because the reality about being a psychic is a lot of people make the psychic world about the bells and whistles and the shiny objects, and it's this amazing show, but really at its core, it's about healing. It's about being better people. It's about looking at our struggles and being able to face them and finding the courage and the faith and the resilience to get through them with a soft heart. And I think that's really, really a difficult thing to do sometimes, because, life can beat us down. Life can beat us down. And so when you're able to tune into your own psychic abilities and you're able to enhance them and work with them, you can, in fact, I think, build a better life for yourself. It doesn't mean that you're not going to go through hell to get it, but you can build a better life for yourself. And
you're talking about developing your psychic intuitive ability. Oh, of course. Right. Okay.
Yeah. And then you can also teach other people how to do the same, because you've already been through it. Yes. So psychic abilities are wonderful, but they're not a means to an end. They are a tool to help us live our life here on this physical plane. Because we're not from here.
I absolutely agree what you said about on this physical plane, and I agree with that. And we're here. We have a purpose. We have a reason. That we're here. Okay. And what I noticed over my career is that no matter what I'm doing with someone, when I'm tuning into them during the reading, it's always been something that I have understood or experienced myself. Yes. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is because regardless of where it's coming from, it's coming through me. Mm-hmm. And if it's spirits, I don't know if it is or it isn't, but if it is, or the energy coming through me, they're using my body and my mind, and they can only speak and use what is stored in my brain.
Right.
And that is restricted to what's in me. So
Right.
I can't see something in someone else unless it's in me.
Right.
You agree
Yeah.
with that too? Right.
I absolutely agree with that. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
see, and I have this weird theory that TV makes us better psychics.
Okay.
And a lot of people would fight with me on that because they talk about how TV blinds your third eye.
Sure.
And I'm like, you know what?
Give me a break.
TV allows us to have experiences that we will never have in real life. Like I hope to God I never have an actual Die Hard movie experience. Like I don't ever want to go through that.
All right.
But,
All right.
but
There are a
watching
few
Die Hard-
movies I would like though. Just to mention a few,
same.
right?
Star Wars would be rad. I'm all about that. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I want a lightsaber.
Star Wars. Yeah.
I want a lightsaber.
My other dream job, two fantasies for me is I would love to be an advisor to a ship's captain, like Deanna
Like
Troy. Only, pardon?
Oh, you're talking about a space.
Yeah,
I would like the Enterprise.
Yes, I would love to be, ship's counselor on a starship. That would be my dream job. Yep. And the other one would be, I would love to meet a real Betazoid and take psychic lessons from her. I suppose. I hope it's her, right? Or her or him, right? So that would be my second fantasy.
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and see, I think it's actually through those wonderful stories that we see on television that our minds are expanded. And when you're an empath or HSP, you empathize with the characters and what they're going through, even if you've never been through it yourself. And so I do think that there's something to actually television being an amazing tool, because in a reading, as like you were saying, spirit can only work with the images and the understanding that you have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if spirit's trying to show you something that you've never been through before, they might, and this has happened to me, I don't know if it's happened to you before, they will show me a scene from a TV show.
You're far more visual than I am. You're much more visual. For me, it's just knowing and the words come through. So yeah. I don't usually get those, I don't get the really happy scenes, and fortunately, gotcha. I don't get the really awful ones either. It's more of a thought and a feeling rather than seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get all of it, and I think it depends on, because I do work with spirits, though. I think a lot of it has to do with how they like to communicate. So if someone comes through in a reading and they were like this vivid talker, then they're going to talk my ear off. And I'll tell my client, whoa, this person's a talker. And they'll laugh and they'll be like, oh my gosh, yes, she was. But then you'll have other spirits who are super quiet and they don't say much. And so I'll ask my client, was this person either very private or very shy? And they'll say yes. And the moment I get the yes from them is when they'll start to open up a little bit more. But yeah, spirits keep their personalities on the other side. So if they were really quiet, those can be the worst to do readings with, because they're so quiet on the other side.
And the ones that are quiet on this side also can be a really pain to do readings for, right?
Yeah, because they're not giving
they're not giving off the energy.
Yeah, they're not participating in the reading, and
absolutely.
It's like I don't want you to talk through the reading, because obviously I need to be able to pull this information myself, but I do need you to tell me yes or no. Right. I'm on the right path.
Absolutely. Especially when you ask for it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Especially when you ask for it. Usually at that point I'm begging, but
please give me something.
Yeah. Put the energy out. So what do you love the most about doing your job and being you doing your job? What do you love the most about it?
Well, the thing I love about me doing my job is I feel like that's when I'm at my most authentic self. That's when I'm really, it's when I'm really in tune with my own spirit. It's when I'm in tune with the field, with the spirit world. And it's when I'm not even focused on myself. It's when I get to focus on someone else and help them through something. And so it is. Yeah, absolutely. And so my favorite part about the job that we do is hearing the relief in someone's voice when that spirit does come through, or hearing the sigh of relief again when you tell them things are going to be okay. It's that relief or that lightness that you feel in their energy when you realize that they have some hope now. Because a lot of times, as a psychic or as a medium or as a healer, and whatever label you want to put on there, we get people who feel broken. They're not broken, but something's happened in their life that's convinced them that they are broken. So they're not broken. They're hurting, sure, they're in pain, but they're not broken. Yeah. So being able to work with these people and help them to accept either the psychic self, the psychic part of themselves, or the shadow part of themselves, or whatever it is, and helping them to integrate that more is very satisfying. But also being able to be that bridge to the other side, or to be that person who has a phone call into the future where I can put out some tarot cards and give them idea on where things are heading, is very valuable. And one of the things too, I think that's been a very important lesson for me as a medium, and this is what I tell all of my students now that are developing their psychic gifts and learning how to give psychic readings, is the emotional response of someone else is not your responsibility. You are not responsible for how they perceive, how they take, how they use that information, or how they behave with it afterwards. You are solely responsible for delivering that message with the most compassion and love possible. That is all you have to do. What they do with that afterwards is on them. And when you're able to make that distinction, and when that really sinks in, and when you give that person permission to be responsible for themselves, it takes a load off of you, because now you can function as the message giver, and you don't have to worry about anything else.
That's an interesting concept. What is it that you don't like about our job that you would like to make different?
I don't like the social stigma. I don't like how people think that, well, if you're psychic, you should know. It's like, that's not.
Yeah.
That's
what did I have for breakfast? Right.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, judging by your breath, onions.
Yeah. Right.
But that
was good.
Yeah, I don't, that's the thing I don't like the most is the social stigma, because it does put a lot of unfair pressure on us. And it keeps a lot of people in the psychic closet, so to speak, because they do have gifts and they do have abilities, and they're afraid of sharing that with people because they think they're going to be teased, or they're afraid of being wrong. And those are all very valid concerns. So yeah, it's just that whole, people don't understand that when you're psychic, you have a sixth sense, and that's really all most of us claim to have. But people twist that, and they start to see us as if we have these godlike powers. And it's like, well, I've never claimed I was the God. I think we're all mini gods because we all come from source. But I'm not going to take credit for creating this planet in the universe. Like, that's not my thing. So that's the thing, is like, a lot of people try to test us as if they're testing God because they think we should know everything. It's like, well, I'm not all knowing. I wish I was.
Yeah. And
well, maybe not.
if you were all knowing, you wouldn't be walking on this planet.
This is true.
Okay. You would be off somewhere else.
Well, what a struggle that would be, to be all-knowing, because all-knowing, like, you know everything. What is there left to learn? What is there left to discover?
If you know everything, nothing. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so it would.
Do you think God would be all-knowing? Well, if that were the case, we'd have nothing to learn.
Well, I don't think that we
could God become stale or burned out. What would happen if you were praying to God? Oh, please help me. Oh, I'm in a pissy mood today. Leave me alone. I don't know. Do you think God would do that?
Well, according to the Old Testament, yeah, that's exactly what he does.
Really?
But
okay.
I don't think any of us have the right idea of what God is or isn't anyhow. Like, my perception of God is I do believe that there's an energy that holds everything together. I believe this energy is intelligent. I believe this energy creates because it loves to create. It's meant to create. I think it loves to learn. I think it learns vicariously through all of us. I think it's incredibly loving, but I also think it's very complex. And I think that within that energy field, there are other beings that we may call gods or angels because we don't know how else to identify them. And they seem to be higher up on a hierarchy than we are. So, I don't think that intelligent force that creates gets in a pissy mood. I think it's just excited all the time to be creating, kind of like a kid who has an endless supply of paper, pens, and markers and paint. It's just like going crazy with the markers and creating all the time. So, yeah.
Okay. So God doesn't get in a pissy mood.
I don't think so.
Okay. Is God punishing? Do you think God cares?
I don't think. Do you think God punishes?
like the guy at the top, of the pyramid of all creation? Do you think God cares about individual, one-on-one? Do you think that would become personal for God?
Well, I think that here's my weird belief on God. So like I said, I believe God is an energy. So I think it's intelligent, but I don't think it's sitting there handing out judgments or anything. But within that creation, because we're a creation of that energy. And so there's going to be other intelligent beings and life forms and life forces that are also a creation of that energy. And I think that those different aliens or life forces, or whatever you want to call them, can claim dominance over, say, like a universe or something. So I think that's why, in the Protestant Christian Bible, you have a God, which is some type of being. It's not the intelligent force that created everything, but it's some type of being that's like, hey, I'm better than all the other gods. You got to listen to me.
Right.
Isn't
that everybody's God though, like that?
It's not though, because when you look at different faiths, when you look at like Hinduism and the Roman gods and everything, there were a lot of different gods, and so you had the gods that were very loving and forgiving and compassionate, but then you had the other ones that were more dominating. So there's this wide range of different gods that have different personalities attributed to them, and with that different qualities. And so I think that's, and I think that what people were believing to be God were probably, I don't want to get too weird, but probably some type of aliens or, future, that we know that they weren't of this planet. And I do believe that they existed somewhere, and we had contact with them at some point in time. And I think that's where a lot of these stories come from. So, a lot of what we have from the Bible and from different older texts are exaggerated stories, but they are, I think a lot of them are based on something that happened. Sure. What it was, I don't know, but.
There's a movie, it's a joke, but I think it's called The Gods Must Be Crazy. And it's a story about this guy flying a biplane, that was open, and he's flying along, and he's going over the plains in Africa, and he's drinking from a bottle of Coke, and he throws the bottle out the window or over the side of the plane, right? And it lands in front of the bushman. The bushman has never seen the bottle before.
Right.
And he looks at it, and because he saw it come down from heaven, and then he took it back to his tribe. And then the story goes from that point onward, how all the different people interpreted the purpose of the Coke bottle, of the bottle. And then there's another episode in The Next Generation where the Enterprise goes into this lesser developed place, and they're hiding because they're observing the culture, right. and then they get recognized. So Picard decides he's going to come down and explain what has happened to these people. And these people thought that Picard was God,
right,
because of what he did and what he was doing.
Yeah.
And each person in that group or in that species had a different impression of how they could deal with the Picard, and some were violent, and you had to do this because that's what the Picard wanted.
Right.
Some were gentle and loving because that's what the Picard wanted.
Right.
And the real Picard was going, holy shit, I'm not that person. I am not God.
And I think that's probably pretty close to what's actually happened. You know, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, you've come from a very strict, narrow-minded religious background.
Yes.
What caused you to be able to get away? And because you were getting away from what you were taught, right, and you were risking hell and damnation for doing that. What guts you have.
Thank you. Well, I didn't like who I was as a Christian. So I think that was a big part of it. I just didn't like who I was. You know, the type of Christians that I were around were very judgmental, even though they preached love and
judge not, yes, to be judged yourself.
Right. Yeah. And, and I mean, we have to be honest, like there's a certain amount of judging that is good, because if you don't have a good head on your shoulders and you're not judging, you know, a situation and people's characters, it can get you into some really bad waters.
Incidentally, when you're judgmental, basically what you've done is formed an opinion. Yes. So Nicole, I have judged you. I've judged you. You're a really great person, right? But I've judged you because so as soon as we have an opinion, we've made a judgment. It doesn't have to be negative. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. This is true. But the type of Christians I was around, they were very negative. And so, you know, they believed that, you know, they were like you were saying, the turn or burn type of Christians. And so that's what I grew up with. And I got away from that. I tried to get away from that when I became a young adult and got kind of pulled back into it because it's what I was programmed for.
That's right.
Yeah. And so I went through a season in my life where everything was going wrong. I had lost my job. My condo was going into foreclosure. Some of my Christian friends had, you know, turned on me in the most vicious ways. The guy I was seeing ended up cheating on me. It was just like all this stuff happening at once. And I was just like, where is God in this? And I was exhausted because it was like, I was one of those evangelists that were knocking on doors every Tuesday night telling the gospel.
Wow.
Like,
you were doing that. Did you get like spit on and yelled at? And
no,
anything?
I never.
No?
I mean, I would get, people would roll their eyes and be like, oh God, you know.
Right.
That sort of a thing. But what was interesting though, this was really cool. What was interesting is I always knew, because I went in groups. I wasn't by myself. So I went in groups.
Of course.
And I always knew which house was going to accept Jesus Christ as their personal God and Savior. Wow. So we would pull into the neighborhood. I'd be like, that house, we got to go to that house right now.
Okay.
And so what was funny is like when people first started working with me, they were like, this girl's nuts. And so, so we would make our rounds because we had this very distinct pattern that we followed in the cul-de-sac or whatever. I'm like, we have to go to that house, house.
Because we're going to work.
Yeah. So we'd finally get to that house and lo and behold, you know, so so I was always right. I was never, ever, ever wrong.
You scored points.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, they
get right in your group. Yeah.
So they learned to listen to me. And then when we started going places and I was like, that house, that was the first one we would hit, because what ended up happening one time is I kept feeling this urgency, like, we're supposed to be at that house. We're supposed to be there right now. And they're like, chill, we're going to be there in 10 minutes. Well, during those 10 minutes, the people that lived in that house got in the car and left.
You missed. Right.
So after that, when I started seeing certain houses, like with the little glow and the little aura, and I was like, that's the one. They started
I know
going.
what that's like. I know that feeling.
So, you know, here I was doing all this stuff for the church and for ministries and for God and for Jesus. And I was praying all the time and memorizing scripture, and my whole life was going to hell. And I was like, this is hell. Like, this right here is hell. So something's not making sense. And I ended up getting so desperate just to have some relief from the depression and everything that I was feeling, that I turned to meditation, because I was in an online forum and that's what they were talking about. Like, meditation can help a lot with depression. And I was scared to death of meditating because I'd been told that was demonic. And so, like, I decided I was going to try it. I was so afraid I was going to be demon possessed, but I was like, I got to try something. So I tried this guided meditation, and it helped. It helped a lot. And what was interesting was, and keep in mind at this point, I have no idea what clairvoyance is, clairaudience, because I haven't been taught any of that. But when I closed my eyes to meditate and followed the story of, you're walking by this beach, you're in a blue lagoon, I was able to see everything very clearly. And in that meditation, you were supposed to just see a beach, but in that meditation, I ended up seeing a man walking towards me, and he had this dog, and I fell in love with the dog. And so I got all excited about this dog in this meditation. So I started talking to the dog, and then the guy comes up and starts talking to me. And what was interesting is that was just like my mind or whatever doing its own thing, because you weren't supposed to meet anyone in that meditation. And so later on, when I start talking to people about it, they're like, that sounds like you met a spirit guide. And I'm like, well, what's a spirit guide? And so from there, it just kind of unfolded from there. And I do remember one day where my house had gone into foreclosure, and I was back at my parents' house.
I guess you do know. That's just awful.
It is. Yeah. I lost so many of my things because I didn't, I couldn't put it in storage or anything. So I was living back with my parents in their mold infested house. And one day I just said to God or whatever was out there, I'm like, if there's more to this than what I see, I want a sign. I want to know, like, if this isn't the right path, I need a sign. Yeah. And I said that so sincerely. And it was like the next day I woke up and I just felt different. And it was like there was this inner knowing of what the right path was. And so it was through that prayer that something was able to open up in me. And I was able to kind of start the process of leaving the turn or burn religion behind me. And it took years to be able to, shed that for good. But yeah, that's kind of how that unfolded. So it was really through depression, I guess you could say, that I found enlightenment. And then just asking, like I said, God, whatever was out there, like, hey, if I'm missing something, if there's more, if this is wrong, like, show me. And the next day, just having some form of clarity.
Over my lifetime, I have had issues with Christians, and
shocking.
Yes, and so I was I was doing psychic things and live performances in the 1970s, and that was back in the days.
Oh, it was definitely not popular back then.
Oh no, and certain Christians believed that they had the right to interfere with my ability to make a living.
Well, yeah, because you're demonic.
and they would and they would protest at a radio station I would be at, or if I was doing a live performance, they would show up and make so much noise I couldn't perform, and things like that. Like they would override me, things like that.
Right.
And I had been afraid of Christians and disliked them very much, in spite of the fact that I had some spiritual connections in around Christianity. Mm-hmm. On my very first podcast, the very first one, the producer, Michelle, recommended I have these two guys on the show. And it was the two Mikes, East Coast Mike, West Coast Mike. And these guys are Christians. They're pastors. They've been around like for 25, 30 years. Okay. And I was really afraid to have them on because of my relationship with Christians. And these guys, but they're also behavioralists, and they're very well educated in other areas. And I was really afraid and nervous with them most of the time. And then finally I confessed that I was afraid of Christians, and I told them why. And instead of the shtick that they had, the two of them both got very, very serious. And East Coast Mike said to me, he said, well, let's settle down here. And he said, what happened to you is there is the business of the church, and then there is the spirituality of the church.
Yeah.
And the business church is the part that hurt you and have hurt a lot of people. And it's the spiritual side of the church that would not do that to you. And I thought about it more and more. And from that podcast, well, I'm not a Christian and I'm not going to be one. I had a different relationship with Jesus. And I separated Jesus and Christians. And I had a different connection and saw things very differently. It was a very healing experience.
And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because a lot of the people that I work with, whether it's giving them a psychic reading or mentoring, a lot of them have that Christian background, and they do walk away from the church so they can keep their faith in Christ. And so they do recognize that the church, whatever it is supposed to be, that's not what it is anymore. And so to protect their own spiritual faith and their sanity, they have to walk away. So,
What a fascinating interview and talk that we have had today. It's great. How wonderful. And this is our second one, and it's even better than the first. So how do people get hold of you if they want your teaching, your guidance, your reading, your spirituality, or just want to see your pretty face? How do they get in touch with you? How do they get in touch with you?
There's a few different ways. So they can visit my web. They can visit they can visit my website. I almost said their website. They can visit my website at guidingechoes.com. My most active communities, though, are on YouTube and on Facebook. So on YouTube, every Monday, I release a new video. And lately, I've been doing a series that teaches people how to connect with their deceased loved ones on the other side. And so that teaches them how to do that. Even if they're not psychic and they're not intuitive, they can still learn how to do it. So that's been my recent series on YouTube. And then they can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and the handles on that are always going to be Guiding Echoes. And by the way, Instagram has had a huge problem with people impersonating psychics. And so I am Guiding Echoes. There's not going to be an underscore. There's not going to be an additional S in my name. It's going to be at Guiding Echoes. It will be spelled correctly. Because scammers are recreating different profiles, and so they're adjusting the names. And so people will go to the fake Guiding Echoes thinking it's me. But the real Guiding Echoes is at Guiding Echoes, and it is spelled correctly. So there you go. That's how they can contact me.
It has been a delight. Thank you.
Thank you. It was wonderful to be here.
Well, that brings us to the end of another really special, exciting, and happy episode of My Side of the Crystal Ball. I'd like to thank my guest tonight, Nicole Antoinette, for her positive, her happy, cheery self, and her special awareness of her abilities, her skills, and how generous she is and the way she shares it. Before I say goodbye, I just have a couple of those old requests. If you're watching us on YouTube, could you please like and comment and subscribe to our channel? Subscribing to our channel gives us a higher rating in the algorithms, and that brings more people to us, and then we can do bigger and better and more podcasts for us. Make a comment, and once again, that gives us more energy, more attention. The more comments, the higher the ratings again. So like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. I'd really appreciate that. Incidentally, you can find our podcast on Apple, Spotify, or pretty much anywhere else where you get or hear your podcasts. If you'd like to find me personally, you can find me on my website, www